3 weeks after I laid my beloved wife to rest, my phone rang with a call that sent ice through my veins. The late afternoon sun was slanting through the living room windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet where Grace and I had spent countless quiet evenings together. I stared at the caller ID for several rings before picking up. Victor Harrison, my late wife's wealthy employer, a man I had only encountered a handful of times during their long professional relationship. His tone was strained, urgent, carrying an undercurrent of unease that immediately set my nerves on edge. "I've found something among Grace's personal items at the office," he said quietly, almost as if afraid someone might overhear. "You need to see it right away. It's important, more than you can imagine." Then his voice dropped even lower, almost a whisper that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Whatever you do, Ethan, do not mention this to your son. Do not breathe a word to your daughter-in-law. Come alone. I cannot stress this enough. Trust me on this." That single instruction terrified me more than anything else had since the day Grace passed. My heart hammered against my ribs as 1,000 questions flooded my mind. What secret could possibly require such desperate secrecy from my own family? The discovery I made that fateful day would unravel every assumption I had held about the people closest to me, shattering the fragile remnants of the life I thought I knew and leaving me to question everything I once held dear. My name is Ethan Walker. For most of my adult life, I lived under the comforting illusion that my world was stable, ordinary, and safe. For 40 beautiful, irreplaceable years, I was married to Grace, the radiant heart of our home and the gentle light of my days. She had a warmth that could melt away the heaviest burdens, a soft smile that reached her eyes, a knowing glance that spoke volumes without words, and a quiet strength that anchored not only our family but everyone fortunate enough to know her. Grace had served as executive assistant to Victor Harrison for nearly 2 decades at his thriving investment firm. Despite his considerable fortune and the high-pressure world he inhabited, she always spoke of him with genuine respect, describing him as fair, principled, and surprisingly down-to-earth. Their working relationship was built on years of mutual trust and reliability. She often came home with stories of late nights preparing for important client meetings, organizing complex files, and quietly ensuring everything ran smoothly behind the scenes. Then, without any real warning, Grace was taken from me after a brief but brutally aggressive illness. One moment she was there, teasing me about burning the toast again, the next, she was gone. Her sudden absence tore my world apart at the seams. The house, once filled with her soft laughter, the faint scent of her favorite lavender candles, and the gentle rhythm of her daily routines, fell into a heavy, suffocating silence that pressed down on me from every corner. Her favorite coffee mug with the delicate floral pattern still rested by the sink, as if waiting for her return. Her reading glasses sat untouched on the nightstand, right beside the half-read novel she'd never finish. Mornings were the cruelest of all. I would wake reaching instinctively for her side of the bed, only for the brutal reality to crash down once more, leaving me gasping in the emptiness. In those early, raw weeks of overwhelming grief, my son Ryan and his wife Melissa stepped in with what seemed like genuine devotion and care. They brought over home-cooked meals, helped sort through the mountains of condolence cards and paperwork, and insisted on handling errands so I could simply sit and breathe. At first, I was deeply grateful for their presence. Grief had clouded my mind so thoroughly, numbing my thoughts and slowing my reactions, that I failed to notice the sharper edge beneath their attentiveness. Looking back now with clearer eyes, their unusual focus stood out, the way they lingered over bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies, and every minute detail of our financial life. They offered to help organize, with an eagerness that, in hindsight, carried hidden motives. But at the time, blinded by sorrow, I saw only a son and daughter-in-law trying their best to support a broken man. 3 weeks after the funeral, Victor's call changed everything. I almost let it go to voicemail, assuming it was nothing more than a polite expression of sympathy from a distant acquaintance. But the conversation quickly veered into strange, unsettling territory. He spoke in hushed tones, explaining that while staff were clearing out old storage areas in the office basement, they had uncovered a sealed envelope addressed to me in Grace's unmistakable elegant handwriting. Company records confirmed she had placed it there several months before her passing, long before her illness took a serious turn. Victor sounded genuinely unsettled, his usual confident businessman demeanor cracked. "Do not tell Ryan or Melissa about this envelope," he warned firmly. "Don't discuss this call with anyone. Just come in as soon as you can. You'll understand when you get here, though I wish with all my heart that you didn't have to." The drive to his downtown office passed in a haze of confusion, anxiety, and mounting dread. Traffic blurred past as my mind raced. Why would Grace leave something at work instead of at home, where we shared everything? Why the layers of secrecy? And above all, why warn me specifically about my own son and daughter-in-law? The questions gnawed at me, each one deeper and more painful than the last. When I finally arrived, an unexpected figure waited outside Victor's sleek office door, a woman I had never met. She looked weary and exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that mirrored my own. The moment our gazes met, a flicker of recognition crossed her face, as though she had seen photos of me or heard Grace describe me. Victor quickly guided us both inside and closed the heavy oak door behind us, the soft click echoing like a finality. He introduced her as Rebecca Lawson, a longtime accountant in his firm who had collaborated closely with Grace on certain sensitive matters over the years. Then, from a locked drawer in his desk, he retrieved the envelope. My fingers trembled violently as I carefully broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The date at the top hit me like a physical blow. It had been written nearly 6 months before Grace's death, during a time when she still seemed healthy and full of life. Tears blurred my vision as I began reading her familiar, flowing script. She began with a declaration of her enduring, unbreakable love for me, expressing a desperate hope that I would never have to read these words. But if I was holding the letter now, she wrote, it meant her deepest, most haunting fears had been realized. The atmosphere in the room grew thick with tension as I continued. Grace revealed that she had unintentionally overheard troubling conversations between Ryan and Melissa over several months, fragments picked up during visits, phone calls she wasn't meant to hear, and quiet discussions in our own home. At first, she had brushed them off as misinterpretations or passing family frustrations. But the more she heard, the more alarmed she became. Her own son and his wife were openly discussing strategies to gain control of our family's finances and assets far earlier than nature would allow, treating my continued life as an inconvenience to their plans. She admitted in the letter how painful and heartbreaking it was to suspect her own child of such cold motives. Yet the patterns were undeniable and grew darker with time. Grace described how Ryan had made discreet, behind-the-back inquiries into my accounts and investments. Melissa had repeatedly pushed for access to legal documents, power of attorney forms, and even suggestions about updating wills under the guise of being prepared. Most chillingly of all, Grace had begun quietly collecting evidence, determined to protect me even if it broke her heart to do so. Victor then slid a thick, well-organized folder across the polished desk. Inside were meticulously compiled copies of emails, bank transaction logs, detailed notes, timelines, and annotated documents Grace had gathered. Rebecca spoke up next, her voice steady but laced with emotion. As the accountant who had assisted Grace in verifying certain irregularities, she confirmed several suspicious transfer attempts using family-linked information. Internal safeguards at the firm had blocked most of them, but the intent behind the actions was unmistakable and calculated. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This was my son, my only child, whom I had raised with endless love, sacrifice, sleepless nights, and unwavering support through every stage of his life. Now the cold evidence suggested he saw me not as a father, but as a barrier standing between him and a substantial inheritance. Part of me violently rebelled against the truth, clinging desperately to denial and memories of better days. Another part searched frantically for any alternative explanation. Yet the documents were overwhelmingly damning. For over 2 long, emotionally draining hours, Victor and Rebecca patiently walked me through every piece of evidence, answering my halting questions with solemn honesty. By the end, I was physically shaking, my world spinning. Grace hadn't hidden the letter because she distrusted me, she had hidden it because she feared, rightly, that I would dismiss the warnings out of blind parental love. She knew me better than I knew myself. In the weeks that followed, I conducted my own discreet, painful investigation. I said nothing to Ryan or Melissa, maintaining the facade of the grieving widower. Instead, I watched and listened with new eyes. Their questions about my savings and retirement accounts grew more probing and frequent. Melissa often suggested selling the family home to make things easier and start fresh, her tone laced with subtle pressure. Conversations about the future always circled back to inheritance with thinly veiled impatience that now sent chills down my spine. The final, undeniable confirmation came one quiet evening. I had gone downstairs for a glass of water, moving silently in the dark house that still felt like hers. I overheard them in the kitchen, assuming I was sound asleep upstairs. Melissa sighed heavily in frustration. "This is dragging on much longer than we thought. I'm getting tired of playing the perfect caregivers." Ryan's calm, chilling reply cut through me like a dagger. "We just have to stay patient. Eventually, it'll all be ours anyway. Dad won't be around forever." Those words from my own son felt like a betrayal that pierced straight through my soul. That night, alone in the darkness of our bedroom, I wept more bitterly and deeply than I had at Grace's graveside, not for lost money or possessions, but for the profound, soul-crushing betrayal of trust. The boy I had nurtured, taught, and loved unconditionally now viewed me as little more than a financial asset to be managed and eventually cashed in. In that moment of crushing clarity and heartbreak, I made a firm, irreversible decision. I consulted a trusted attorney the very next morning and began a comprehensive, meticulous overhaul of my entire estate. I placed ironclad legal protections around my finances, redirected significant portions of my wealth into irrevocable charitable trusts, and established generous educational scholarship funds in Grace's name. I ensured that my remaining years would never depend on people who saw me only through the cold lens of greed and entitlement. When Ryan eventually discovered the changes through legal notifications, his mask slipped completely. There was no concern for my emotional well-being or our fractured relationship, only raw, explosive fury over the money he believed was rightfully his and now slipping away. The heated argument that followed laid bare years of hidden resentment, entitlement, and bitterness that I had never suspected. For the first time since losing Grace, a fragile but genuine sense of peace began to settle over my wounded heart. One sunny afternoon several months later, I visited the scholarship program established in her loving memory. Students from various backgrounds shared heartfelt, moving stories of how the support had transformed their futures, allowing them to attend college, pursue dreams once thought impossible, and break cycles of hardship. Listening to their gratitude and seeing the hope in their eyes, I felt Grace's gentle presence more vividly than I had in many long months. Her compassion and quiet strength continued to ripple outward, touching countless lives long after she had left this world. Today, the ache of missing her remains a constant, tender companion. There are still quiet, solitary moments when I would trade nearly everything for one more conversation, one more warm embrace, or one more of her knowing smiles. Yet I am profoundly thankful for her final, extraordinary act of love. Even from beyond the veil, she had seen what I could not, or would not, and fought fiercely to protect me. The envelope she left behind did far more than expose a painful family truth. It safeguarded my future, restored my independence, and reminded me in the deepest way that genuine love truly endures. Sometimes the people we trust most can wound us the deepest. But sometimes, the person who loves us most fiercely continues to shield and guide us long after they've departed. As I left the scholarship event that beautiful afternoon, I paused in the warm sunlight, looked toward the clear blue sky, and offered a gentle, heartfelt smile. For the first time since Grace's passing, the heavy grip of grief loosened just enough for something warmer and healing to emerge, deep, abiding gratitude. Her last message had not only revealed the betrayal but had also given me the wisdom, courage, and strength to survive it and rebuild. Real love does not vanish with death. Sometimes it leaves behind a quiet warning. Sometimes it leaves behind a powerful legacy. And sometimes, it leaves behind exactly what we need to carry on, with hope, dignity, and an open heart. Grace had given me all of that, and more. And for that, I would be forever grateful.